Hello and welcome to Business 360. I'm Arundhati Ramanan, and here are the headlines that we're tracking for you this evening. The Supreme Court upholds the abrogation of Article 370 that stripped Jammu and Kashmir of special status, holds that the Indian Constitution is fully applicable to Jammu and Kashmir, directs for elections to be held by September 2024. Justice Kaul, in an epilogue to his judgment, recommended a Truth and Reconciliation Commission to record the human rights abuses faced by Kashmiri pundits. Bulls consolidate with gains on Dalal Street. Sensex and Nifty hit fresh record highs, even though the gains remain limited. All sectoral indices except pharma end in the green. Heavy bombing in Southern Gaza as Israel military escalates its aggression. Hamas warns it won't release the hostages alive if Israel doesn't free more Palestinian prisoners. UN General Assembly to hold emergency meeting to vote on a draft resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza. Indian Sugar Mills Association tells CNBC-TV18 they expect a positive outcome after meeting the Petroleum Secretary over ethanol production curbs, say they do not foresee any fall in production. Sugar stocks recover in anticipation. Ola Electric set to file papers with SEBI for an IPO on the 20th of December. Sources say the company plans to raise $700 million and eyes a valuation of over $7 billion. That's an exclusive. Ashok Leyland CEO Shenu Agarwal says a price hike is on the cards, but no decision yet on timing and quantum. He is optimistic about demand in Q4, but also adds that it's too early to comment about demand in the next financial year. U.S. drug regulator issues 10 observations for Dr. Reddy's Telangana plant. Document assessed by CNBC-TV18 highlights observations ranging from quality control procedures not being followed to failure to explain why unexplained discrepancy. Analysts say the observations are serious and could result in a warning letter. Chhattisgarh suspense ends. Former BJP State Unit Chief Vishnu Sai is the new Chief Minister, becomes the second tribal leader after late Ajit Jogi to lead the state. The swearing-in ceremony is scheduled for tomorrow. Income Tax Department claims to have seized over 350 crore rupees in cash after raiding a distillery firm in Odisha run by family members of Congress MP Dheeraj Sahu. This is the highest ever cash seizure in a single operation. 50 bank officials counted 176 bags of cash over 5 days. The COP28 climate summit enters the last leg. The United Nations, along with Western countries and others, push for phasing out of fossil fuels, but there is no consensus. Developing nations and oil producers oppose the move. Let's start with the big newsmaker this evening. FICCI's new president, Anish Shah, is optimistic that the Indian economy will grow by 8% in FY25, with a significant rise in private capital expenditure in the manufacturing sector. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Shah, who is also Mahindra Group's MD, added that incentives on electric vehicles should continue beyond this fiscal year. He also believes that EVs could cross 50% penetration if the right infrastructure is in place. Take a look.
India is in a sweet spot. It's a great position to be right now. And we're seeing a much greater momentum that's building up. So I would actually venture to say that we will likely cross the 8% mark next year. We see manufacturing leading that this time because there are two key trends. One is Indian manufacturers are starting to build world-class products and put in a lot more R&D. And that will translate to making in India, not just for India, but for the world.
Neelkant Mishra of Axis Capital believes that India can do even better than 7% GDP growth in 2024. Speaking to CNBC-TV18, Mishra said that there is a lot of spare capacity that needs to be filled.
Well, it starts on a fairly optimistic note. And after you wrote your note on December 7th and said that you expect a 7% GDP, the Reserve Bank has followed suit, saying 7%. But what's your sense? Do you think we can do even better than 7?
I think we can. And remember that this 7% growth is on the back of fiscal tightening, meaning the government is sticking to its fiscal consolidation roadmap.
Now to the day's market action. Records continue to tumble on Dalal Street as Sensex and Nifty scaled fresh peaks once again, but the gains were limited. Sensex hit 70,000 in intraday trade, but ended just shy of that mark towards the end of day. Nifty is now just a whisker away from 21,000. All sectoral indices except pharma ended in the green. Prashant Nair is here with all of the action from Dalal Street. Prashant?
A quieter kind of a day today after last week, which was really massive, with almost a 3.5% gain on the Nifty, Bank Nifty, which went up almost 5.5%. So the start has been a little slow. The Nifty ending with about a 15-20 odd point gain. The Nifty Bank doing a little better. But the broader market, mid caps and small caps, really rich in action on the positive side. 0.63% kind of gains coming in both the mid and the small cap part of the index. PSU banks, top of the list. They've been the big winners last week as well. And the other two sectors today which did well were metals and real estate. We'll get to stocks in just a bit. Let me just start with, of course, the Nifty, the large cap names which participated. UPL was one of the top gainers. Ultratech was up about 3%. And then there was ONGC, which was up about 1.5% as well. The big cut, and that's the reason why the pharma index itself was under pressure. The only perhaps large index which was in the red was Dr. Reddy's. DRL ended about 5% lower. There were some other losers, Axis, Cipla, Mahindra & Mahindra, but nothing large, 1% or less than that. In the broader markets, more advances as compared to sort of losers. IRFC was a big gainer. IREDA, not almost, but 20% limit up on the day. GMR Infra, big story. We broke that on Friday, another 6% today. Dixon was up about 7% or so. Gandhar Oil, 10% gains. Recent listing there. Wockhardt Pharma, there was news. Stock was up about 14%. Titagarh, Inox Wind, J&K Bank. I could go on. Tube Investments, Subros, Karur Vysya Bank are some of the other 6 and 7% kind of movers that we had. On the downside in the broader space, there was oil marketing as a pack which pulled back. They had a large rally in the month of November and, of course, early December as well. Lal Pathlab saw some selling pressure. And then there was Canfin Homes, which sold off about 4.5% as well. So all in all, not a bad session, although frontline indices were a bit quiet. It's a big week this week because of the global data points. Essentially, you have the US CPI, which we get tomorrow. And then, of course, the Fed decision is the big talking point. That is only Wednesday, to which we will react only on Thursday morning. Back to you.
Right. Thank you, Prashant, for all of those details. Now on to the energy markets, where oil prices rose for the second straight session, as supported by the United States' efforts to replenish strategic reserves. However, concerns about oversupply and softer fuel demand growth limited gains. Sugar stocks recouped their losses after the Petroleum Secretary met industry stakeholders to take stock of the sugar production. This comes days after the government directed mills to not use sugarcane juice for ethanol production in a bid to tame prices. Association representing sugar companies expects a positive outcome after meetings with the government. Sonal Butra joins us now with the details. Sonal, how will the government's rules impact sugar companies?
The news that led to this is that government has asked sugar mills not to use sugarcane juice and syrup for ethanol output for 2023-2024 season. But supply of ethanol from existing offers received by OMCs from B-heavy molasses will continue. Now, in terms of numbers, 65% of ethanol production is via B-heavy molasses, 25% by sugarcane juice, and the rest, that is 10%, by C-heavy molasses. What will the impact of this move be? Well, sugar production will increase from 29 million tons currently by around 2 to 2.5 million tons. The move was actually taken due to a fear of sugar shortage in the country. Second, sugar volumes, they will not change as demand will be stable. This is Elara Capital's view. Third, sugar prices are expected to decline due to more supply. In fact, Balrampur Chini told CNBC-TV18 that sugar prices could see a decline of at least 5% from current sales price of 39 rupees a kg. Fourth, ethanol volumes are likely to decline for companies which have juice ethanol capacity. Now, ethanol is usually the high-margin business for sugar companies. Elara Securities told CNBC-TV18 that they expect first half of FY25 to be negative for sugar companies with juice ethanol capacity. And ethanol volumes, they could decline by 20% in the first half, with overall EBITDA declining by around 4 to 5% over the next 18 months. There will be no impact on FY24 numbers, but we could see that in FY25. According to them, C-heavy ethanol and B-heavy ethanol have better margins, but they want to see what is the impact on operating leverage and also on fixed costs now that ethanol capacity will be idle to a certain extent. And also, Balrampur Chini had spoken to us on Friday, and he said that the projects or the contracts that has been tendered till now for B-heavy molasses will be executed, but they do not think there is any clarity on new tenders for B-heavy molasses. However, the company, like other industry experts, thinks it is a temporary move, and this is exactly what the Secretary Consumer Affairs told CNBC-TV18. He said that review is a constant process and they continue to review production numbers. They have a meeting every week and they can change the numbers and the production levels if required, the outlook that is. Domestic availability of sugar is the supreme criteria for the government, and stock at the start of the next season coincides with festive season, and hence they will track this very, very closely. They also say prices are expected to remain in control because of the action which has been taken by the government.
Absolutely. So sugar stocks, they're recouping their losses. Thank you so much for those details, Sonal. Now, the Supreme Court has upheld the centre's August 29 decision to abrogate Article 370, which stripped Jammu and Kashmir of its special status. In a landmark judgment, a Chief Justice-led bench ruled that Article 370 was an interim arrangement in view of the special circumstances because of the war conditions in the state. Ashmit Kumar joins us now with the details. Ashmit, a landmark judgment there by the court. Take us through the key contours of this judgment.
Well, a landmark judgment indeed from the Supreme Court that has upheld the status of the 2019 actions that removed the special status of J&K. Now, the judgment came from a bench of 5 judges headed by the Chief Justice of India. Here are 5 key takeaways. Number 1, Supreme Court has upheld that abrogation of Article 370 as constitutionally valid. The 2019 exercise has been given a thumbs up. The Supreme Court held that President has the authority to act unilaterally to repeal Article 370. The Supreme Court also rejected the contention of the petitioners that President was bound to seek the concurrence of the J&K Assembly. Number 2, the Supreme Court has held unequivocally that after signing of the instrument of accession, J&K does not retain any element of sovereignty. The Supreme Court held that Article 370 was a feature of asymmetric federalism and that it should not be confused with sovereignty. Number 3, the Supreme Court also upheld the centre's stance that Article 370 was a temporary provision. The petitioners had argued that after the Constituent Assembly of J&K ceased to exist, Article 370 had become permanent. However, the Supreme Court has held that Article 370 was transitory in nature, only to allow the Constituent Assembly to ratify the state constitution. Number 4, the Supreme Court has held that Constitution of India is applicable to the whole of J&K. With this declaration, the Supreme Court has also held that Constitution of the J&K is now inoperative and redundant. And finally, number 5, on the question of breaking up of the state into union territories of J&K and Ladakh, the Supreme Court has said that it will not enter that debate. The Supreme Court instead has chosen to hold the centre to its assurance that statehood shall be restored. The Supreme Court has, however, upheld the decision of carving out Ladakh from J&K and finally directed for the elections to be held to the J&K Assembly by no later than September 30th, 2024. Now, the Prime Minister tweeted to welcome the Supreme Court verdict. The Prime Minister called the judgment a beacon of hope and a promise of a brighter future. Meanwhile, even before the judgment was pronounced, Kapil Sibal had tweeted that some battles are fought to be lost. With this, the Supreme Court has drawn curtains on a highly volatile issue consigning Article 370 to the history books.
क्या यही फैसले की हम उम्मीद लगाए बैठे थे? बिल्कुल नहीं। हमने सुप्रीम कोर्ट का दरवाज़ा खटखटाया था क्योंकि हम इंसाफ की उम्मीद कर रहे थे। क्या दोबारा अदालत के दरवाज़ों को खटखटाना हमारे लिए एक पॉसिबिलिटी है या क्या हम उस पर सोच सकते हैं? मैं कह नहीं सकता हूँ। हमें अपने वकीलों से बात करनी होगी।
सुप्रीम कोर्ट का आज का फैसला ये एक पड़ाव है, मुश्किल ही सही पर पड़ाव है, ये मंजिल नहीं है हमारी। इसको मंजिल समझने की गलती मत करो। जिस आइडिया ऑफ इंडिया के साथ, जिस गांधी के हिंदुस्तान के साथ, जिस गंगा जमनी तहजीब के साथ जम्मू कश्मीर के मुसलमानों ने पाकिस्तान को दरकिनार करके यहाँ के सिखों के साथ, यहाँ के बुद्धिस्ट के साथ, यहाँ के क्रिश्चियंस के साथ, यहाँ के हिंदू भाइयों के साथ गांधी के मुल्क के साथ हाथ मिलाया, आज ये उस आइडिया ऑफ इंडिया की हार है।
देश के संविधान ने जो उनको अधिकार दिए हैं, उन मूलभूत अधिकार समाज के हर वर्ग को मिले हैं। ये एक बहुत बड़ा न्याय के साथ साथ राष्ट्रीयता का भी विषय था। ये निर्णय हुआ है, ये निर्णय जनता के लिए है, गरीबों, मस्कीनों, ज़ईफों और बेसहारा लोगों को एक सहारा देने वाला है।
On that note, it is time for us to head into a short break. But coming up next, Ola Electric set to file papers with SEBI for an IPO on the 20th of December. More details when we come back. Stay tuned.
CNBC-TV18, embarking on a quarter-century of excellence.
Welcome back. You're watching Business 360. Onto a CNBC TV18 exclusive. Ola Electric is set to file papers with the SEBI for an IPO on the 20th of December. Sources tell CNBC TV18 that the company plans to raise $700 million and eyes a valuation of over $7 billion. This will be the first public offering by an auto company in the last 2 decades. Parikshit Luthra is standing by with the details. Parikshit, what are your sources telling you?
Well, all eyes on this IPO, and yes, it will be the first for the auto sector in about 20 years. This DRHP could be filed anytime before the 20th of December. We learned that it could happen early next week, and Ola wants to raise $700 million. This is for expanding its electric vehicle footprint in India, R&D into future electric vehicles such as motorcycles, electric cars. They have in the past showcased an autonomous vehicle to the media as well. And a big chunk of this will also go towards lithium-ion cell manufacturing in India. This is something that Ola has been betting big on, and possibly they could begin cell manufacturing in India by February or March next year. As you said, they're looking to list at a valuation of $7 to $8 billion by early 2024, and they have been increasing their gross margins from minus 5.4% in FY22 to 7.63% in FY23. They're projecting sales of 0.3 million in FY24 and 0.9 million by FY25. The company sold 0.15 million electric vehicles in FY23, and they plan to achieve EBITDA profitability by FY25 of 6.6%. This is what sources are telling us. Very recently, the company had changed its name from a private limited to a public limited company. They had also closed a 3,200 crore funding round with Temasek and SBI. Now, this is coming on the back of certain reports which said that Ola Electric slashed its sales forecast to 300,000 from 882,000 in FY24. This was as per Reuters. The agency had also reported that for FY24, Ola Electric had slashed its revenue forecast from $1.5 billion to $591 million. So lots really riding on this IPO as far as Ola Electric's future plans in the mobility segment go.
So lots riding on that plan of Ola Electric to list on the bourses. Thank you so much for all those details, Parikshit. But moving on, Ashok Leyland's CEO, Shenu Agarwal, says a price hike is on the cards, but no decision taken yet on timing and quantum. Speaking to CNBC TV18, Agarwal said that the company's retail inventory saw some corrections in November, but remains very optimistic about overall demand in the fourth quarter.
On the price increase, yes, we have heard that Tata has announced a 3% hike for commercial vehicles pricing from 1st of January. We have not decided on the price increase as yet. But yeah, the fact remains that, over the last couple of years, the amount of input cost that has increased, we have not been able to pass it on to the market completely. So there is a need for a price hike. As soon as we take a decision, we will also announce that. As far as the discounting is concerned, I don't think there has been a major shift in discounting in August or after August. I think the discounting levels are quite consistent with what we have seen in the past in the industry. So we are quite hopeful.
And as Shenu Agarwal pointed out, Tata Motors will increase the prices of its commercial vehicles by 3% from January next year. The auto major said that the price increase is aimed at offsetting the residual impact of past input costs. Remember, this comes soon after other auto majors like Maruti Suzuki, M&M and Audi announced plans to hike prices. SpiceJet shares soared to 52-week highs today after the airline announced plans to soon list its securities on the National Stock Exchange. The surge also comes ahead of the company's board meet to consider options to raise fresh funds by issuing equity shares or convertible securities on a preferential basis. Indian companies have no choice but to comply with the European Union's carbon tax. That's the word from Steel Secretary N. Sinha. Shireen Bhan spoke to India's top bureaucrats at a FICCI event. Pharma Secretary Arunesh Chawla said substandard drugs are bad for industry's image and spoke about the recent government crackdown. Take a look.
If someone produces a low-quality drug, it farms the brand name of the whole industry. So we are working with the drug regulator, which is the CDSO, to quickly develop and upgrade our standards for both pharmaceuticals, traditional pharmaceuticals, the biologicals, biosimilars that are coming up, and the new meditech industry. And at the same time, we have set up a window, a scheme to assist all those industries, all those medium to smaller players who genuinely want to upgrade their quality standards.
If we talk to the Indian industry, many of them are willing to comply because, until unless we are able to convince you that...
you have no choice but to comply.
But to comply. And so industry is getting ready, and we think we will be in a position. We fear that if it is a contagion which spreads to many other countries, say for example UK or US or many other parts, then it will become a problem. And so we are keeping a watch.
And before we wrap, India's income tax department claims to have seized over 350 crore rupees in cash after raiding a distillery firm in Odisha run by family members of Congress MP Dheeraj Sahu. This is the highest ever cash seizure in a single operation. 50 bank officials counted 176 bags of cash over 5 days. The cash recovered was sent to three SBI branches that were nearby, and they had to employ additional staff to count the notes through the weekend for the last 5 days. And with that, it is a wrap on this edition of Business 360. Many thanks for watching, but stay tuned to CNBC TV 18. The news continues right here on the other side.